All right, so we're gonna start right on 6.1, action. It's for action 277459, teacher supplies and materials appropriation. Ben's gonna talk about that. Thank you, Ben. And then even again, introduce yourself at the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I am still Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. This agenda item is a follow-up to your discussion of this rule, I believe, in last month's committee meeting, where you gave staff some direction as to amendments for this rule. Most of the changes you'll see in this rule are technical changes to update the rule. It hadn't been updated in a while and needs to be continued, I believe. And the big substantive change you'll find on lines 71 through 74, and that's an attempt to speed up the time in which teachers receive their classroom supply funds. This will go along with the board's efforts to do an RFP for the what do you call the program, Scott?
It's that program that starts with
The
the W.
RFP you're going to do.
Yeah, it's for a system for in support of teacher supplies.
So a distribution system will go along with this, but the attempt is to get the funds to teachers as early as possible so that they can use those for their classrooms. And I think that's primarily what you need to know at this point. Unless you have questions.
Do you have any questions on this?
No, I don't.
Okay, Ben, I do have one question. Have we had any pushback from the field on us trying to run it from here, or are they feeling maybe happy about it and them not having to figure it out?
Well, I know that we got feedback from, when we met with the USSA superintendents yesterday, the ones that had done the pilot program, I think, with the wallet application have loved it, was the feedback that we got specifically from Nebo District. We had one district express some concerns that hadn't been part of that pilot program, but I think we were able to answer those. So I think as far as pushback, I think you're good.
Did we do any charters? Did we look and have them pilot?
Yes, there was charter schools that piloted too. There were two.
Okay.
And their feedback
It was positive.
Positive,
Okay, because just being in the school and having it change every year has been very hard on teachers and for them to get that funding going. Okay, I'm seeking a motion.
Welcome to a Cisco meeting. You're in the meeting now.
That is not a good motion.
Okay, I move that we approve R277-459 draft 1 and send to the board and recommend to the board for second and final
As amended
As amended.
and continued.
and continued.
Because it's a sunset. Okay. All right, any discussion to that here? Oh, I didn't even ask for anybody. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Is that all you have for us today? Okay. Oh, well, where is it?
5:53. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ben. Okay, we're on 6.2, it's an action item. The status of USB carry forward balances and recommended changes or in action. Is Deborah gonna do that?
Yeah.
Oh, she did come in, I didn't see her back there.
She always tries to miss introductions, so.
Well, then you can come to the table and introduce yourself.
Twice. So while she's approaching, I just want to make sure that, or just to bring everybody up to why we're doing this. When we incur the carry forward balances, they're non-lapsing balances, meaning we don't have to turn the money back in. But then we're required to create spend plans, right, or to be able to articulate or communicate to the legislature what we plan to do with those carry forward balances. We go through that iterative process year in and year out, much in conjunction with year-end close activities. Then we bring the proposals to you, to the Finance Committee, for you to make recommendations to the board to approve what you'll see are these carry forward or spend plans for the carry forward dollars. What's happened though in the past is that we get to year end and there are some carry forward balances that haven't been executed to a percentage that, for lack of a better term, would be acceptable by the legislature. They're concerned that well, you give us these spend plans, but then you don't execute the spend plans. So as a means of, and I'm really glad that Chief Audit Executive Davis is here to hear this, because there's an internal control audit going on. I just want to make sure that this is an internal control technique by you reviewing these balances and making sure that, you know, we are executing them, or if not, then we can come to you and make other alternative suggestions. We lower the risk of these dollars being swept because we didn't spend that money. Okay, that's really why we're trying to do this iterative process with you. And we did wait, you know, 6 months into the fiscal year so that there would be time to get to where we're at right now. So that's the background behind why we are doing this agenda item. So that, you know, it's worth your time, or it's a value add, so that we don't risk losing funding down the road because we just weren't really tracking or so.
So Scott, for clarity, or that we're able to use that funding, not necessarily
Right.
lose it. And I have one question, Deborah, before you start. Did the groups that had this funding, are they the ones who have put the carry forward plan or the spend plan forward? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't say that right.
Yeah, so
Okay,
the
all right.
sections own these, so you'll
Okay.
see it, so if everyone will pull up the
Yeah.
backup documentation, chart, if you will, that starts with the first column being the section. So the section owns it, right? To your question, Chair Belknap.
Yep.
Assessment came up with these spend plans specific to their programs, new program accounting here at the Utah State Board of Education. And Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong, that third column that's carried forward is what we started with, correct?
That was the full carry forward.
Yeah, the full carried
Okay.
forward amount at year-end close. Then the fourth column is what's been obligated to date. That results in the.
Well, no, no.
Go ahead.
So this was the
Oh.
original, sorry, Deborah Jacobson, Finance Director. This was the original spend plan that we put forward for the approve in October. So everything to the left has not changed. The carry forward was how we ended the year. The obligated amount was what was obligated by the end of the year, but not yet expensed. And then the remaining carry forward, that's what the spend plans are based off of. And then you have the actual plans by the sections that they have determined. Now over here on the right, we've added new columns for this exercise. What is encumbered to date? What has actually been paid out, and the remaining amount that still needs to be encumbered or paid out. And then any notes that we may have. So in assessments in AA8D, that first column there, he had originally asked or suggested that 569,000 go back to the board for your suggestion on reallocation. He is now requesting to retain those funds because some of his RFPs that are out for some of the new assessments are coming in much higher than they had anticipated. So he would like to retain those funds for that.
So give me my money back.
Yes, he's asking to keep it.
He said, please.
He did say please.
Was this Darren?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He did say please. Other than that one request, we really don't have any other requests for this particular month. They're still all working on RFPs, putting out PRFs for the specific items that they've looked at. We do have some sections that are now reevaluating. They think either their original plans aren't gonna work, things have changed, they have new needs. So in the next few months, we'll probably start seeing some of those asks to reallocate the carry forward.
So that's why also too, Chair, we suggest this be an action item, because as we go, there may be requests from staff.
And we
that-
could do one at a time
Right.
rather than the whole
Yeah,
thing.
right.
So we're gonna need a motion on that first one.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm seeking does anyone have any questions? I'm so proud of my committee. Seriously, I want you to know that we spent time saying, let's really read, make sure we're on target so that we can ask questions ahead of time anyway. And I know there's gonna be a lot more discussion on other things, so then I would, I don't think this involves community on this, so, I will be seeking a motion.
I move that we accept Deborah's report. Action item.
But don't we need to do Darren's request, the first request? How much is it?
569,862.
That we now assessment for $569,000.
Or to send to the board on,
To send to the board for further review.
or, on second, do we need to read it, or just as a, we just need them to approve it as an action item?
Yeah, it's an action item.
Tammy, can you figure that one out?
All over the place. Each one's so different, it's not.
Maybe that's an action item.
That's right, so, okay. Any other questions by committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Tammy? All right, Deborah, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing more of these.
Yes.
It's your 6.4.
All right, we're going on to 6.3. It's an action item, Medicaid in schools. Who's doing that? You?
Well, yes, with some help from our partners here. If you guys, if both of you will come up and introduce yourselves again, I know you did. Let's see. So this, Chair, this agenda item is concerning, or really is an ongoing process as well. As I stated in the, so back in the interim session, we were required, we being Department of Health and the Utah State Board of Education, to come back to the legislature and make recommendation on Medicaid in schools, right? So we did that, and I did provide the report in there, you guys to review on what we provided to the legislature. So, what I need to do is if we could go down to if you all pull the report up and go to the recommendations, there were two key recommendations, or I actually think I extrapolated those brought them out as far as the agenda item. So, first recommendation.
Been under the bill?
No, so I put the.
Is it an adopt a cost-based reimbursement method?
Yeah, so gives you background on how are Utah schools, how do schools receive Medicaid funding? And on page 5, it says recommendations to increase Medicaid funding for the SBSD program. And SBSD is short for School-Based Skills Development Program. So the first recommendation was adopt a cost-based reimbursement methodology for LEAs. And this, right from the top, the Utah Department of Health is exploring implementation of a cost-based reimbursement methodology for the SBSD program. The second recommendation is to remove the requirement for a minimum of 180 minutes per day of combined special education and related services for children's age 3 to 22. So I want to spend a little bit more time, both are important, but I want to spend a little bit more time on this so the finance committee members and the public and so can understand. Currently, Medicaid only reimburses for children who have at least 180 minutes in the special classroom placement. This is the criteria for level C children adopted by the USBE, Medicaid at the onset of the SBSD program. So the number of children whose services would be eligible for Medicaid reimbursement by removing this minimum requirement would increase. This change will require additional state match from the LEAs. And in both recommendations, that's a key takeaway for you to consider. that whatever we do going forward would likely or positively or absolutely result in, LEAs having to provide a match. And I wasn't able to get feedback to the extent of the LEAs on that, so we might have to come back to that at a different date. The business administrators are all in their UASBO meeting today, so we couldn't get one. So for today's purposes, what we're seeking from the Finance Committee is a recommendation to the board that supports the two recommendations that, we'll elaborate a little bit further. We'll talk a little bit more about this. But then also too, what's really important about this, and it's in the CCSSO realm, as far as what's been reported, is other states have implemented this with pretty good success. There's models of coming out of Michigan, success meaning that they're getting they're getting the funding, right, from the billing process that takes place. What's different though is in states is sometimes the lead agency is the Department of Health, sometimes it's the Department of Human Services, and then there's one state right now where it's the Utah State Board of Education. However, they're all involved in this, and that's really what we need to develop going forward, as well as who's going to be the lead agency on this. We're partners in this process as long as the board, wants to continue to follow or lead up to these recommendations. So at this point, in case I missed anything, please, as the chair and committee, I'd ask our two guests here to elaborate further on anything I said, and also make sure that if I missed something, make sure you introduce yourselves too. Is that okay, Chair?
Yes.
Absolutely. Chair, my name is Eric Tadahara. I am the Assistant Director for the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and I oversee our children and youth programming. I actually did invite someone from Medicaid, and they were unable to be here as well. So they apologized for that. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Scott Ayer, Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. I'm a school-based mental health specialist for this Board of Education, so I'm here mostly, but work with Eric.
Collaborating very heavily. So,
And which one of you would be the best to elaborate further on SBSD on the school? Okay.
so yeah, I will.
So
I
please
will.
make
Yeah,
sure you do-
absolutely. So
You don't
the
need to hear this part of it.
So to make things a little bit, hopefully to clarify a little bit, so SBSD is the school-based skills development piece. So that is very specific historically to a lot of the special education services that have been Medicaid reimbursable. So instead of something like the behavioral health care, which is actually in the next section on the report, it is very specific to those skills pieces. And through the committee work that we had done in looking at this, there was a substantial look at especially looking at the cost reimbursement, because right now it's a bundled rate, and the bundled rate hasn't really been increased for some time. And then the other piece was the recommendation on the 180 minutes. And the 180 minutes can be quite a barrier for a youth who may only receive an hour or two per day of these types of services, and then they may not be able to be reimbursed at that point. Obviously, there are still the match requirements, as Scott had said. Outside of that, those are the two major recommendations, though, and those are the rationale was to find a better way to reimburse for the services as they're provided under that skills-based or the school-based skills development. And then in regard to, I'll just want to hit on a little bit on the behavioral health piece, just so you guys are all aware based on the report. So the behavioral health services through Medicaid are all provided through the prepaid mental health plans, and those are things that we help Medicaid when it comes to the oversight and some of the work as it goes through our local mental health authority system. So with that, there is already a reimbursement method. And here, though, this kind of goes a little bit further into having a couple recommendations to allow for additional reimbursement for those services that are not reimbursed through the prepaid mental health plans. Because of the way that the prepaid mental health plans operate under the county-driven system, this would be an ability through the schools to actually bill for those, but it also would require an additional match for the Medicaid piece. But it's just an additional piece that I think is important as we're kind of noting that. And did you want me to say anything on the physical health piece as well? Okay. So then the last piece was the general recommendation to increase physical health care that is provided through the Medicaid reimbursable services for schools as well. Right now, as you can see in the report, there are only the five the 5 school-based healthcare programs. And 2 of them are in Salt Lake, one's in Provo, one's in Hurricane, and one's in St. George. So this would hopefully be a way to increase the number of individuals who are able to receive Medicaid services through a school-based program. Obviously with a school being willing to provide those services. Questions?
Medicaid the same as CHIP, or is that?
CHIP is a program that is operated under the Office of Medicaid.
CHIP's a health insurance
It is
part
a-
of that.
So they're both health, yeah, they're,
Right.
so they,
Would CHIP be also covered underneath
not
this, or
underneath this.
just, okay,
Yeah, so
I
this is
was
strictly related to the Medicaid.
just strict.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Said there's an example of what happens with a prepaid card, and then there's others that aren't, services or whatever aren't done on the prepaid card.
So the prepaid mental health plan is is managed through our local mental health authority system, which is the county-based structure for behavioral health care. So that is carved out of the entire Medicaid structure. So that structure, then, we help provide some of the oversight, and we work with Medicaid directly to oversee the services that are provided through the county structure. And then through the county structure, those are managed for every person who is considered to be eligible for Medicaid. There are,
What are some that are not prepaid on that?
so for an individual who is not already eligible, they would not be under the prepaid mental health plan, under Medicaid. So that, it's for individuals who are not insured or who are underinsured is kind of the aspect of that, to be able to draw down federal funding from Medicaid. So there's that ability, it's just not something we've looked in, we've pursued as a state.
Okay, and then who established the 180?
Established in our rule. I couldn't find which rule, so I need to circle back to Leah. I'll find that for you.
So it's not Medicaid or the feds who
No, I
have
think
put
it's a
that?
state mandate.
So honestly,
Unless-
Scott, are we looking at something? Because, I mean, what if they do an hour,
Right,
you
well,
know?
so
Is there going to
we have,
be some
another
Other
guest.
current requirements.
We have another guest that came in. So you introduce yourself, and I think maybe you could answer this question better.
Sure, I'm Jessie Mandel. I'm with Voices for Utah Children, and I was also on the committee that helped with the report this summer and have worked on this policy on the physical health side. I'm more familiar with that. I'm also on the Medicaid Advisory Committee as well. And to your question, Utah's the only state, to my knowledge, that has this 180-minute threshold rule. So I don't think that it's something, we're unique in that, and it is limiting students' ability to access services.
So we're also unique, we're the only one who runs through the State Board of Education,
Well,
according to what you said.
well, what I'm saying is that when I do find the rule, whatever, that's what my understanding, obviously.
No, I'm not
it's
180,
important.
that the Medicaid flows through us, and in every
No.
other state, it,
No, so you explain how it works right now. It doesn't flow through us right now. This is why we're having this discussion, is because there's discussion about who it should flow through. And that's why we need to
but I
make
thought
an
you said,
informed
it
decision.
helped me, Scott, I thought you said in uniqueness, that the majority of the Medicaid is at workforce services or social services.
In other
not
states.
Other states,
In
that's what
other
I'm saying.
states,
And
yes.
are we the only one that it is the State Board of Education?
So Jordan School, go ahead, tell about Jordan School District's
Sure,
role.
so right now, and every state works differently in terms of, especially
Are
with
they
how
kind of the agent district or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
State operates
Yeah,
as their
so it's
own
not
agent for
us,
that.
it's not the
Okay.
board, it's, yeah. Okay.
And so right now, Jordan School District has actually taken the lead on billing for Medicaid in some areas. But that is just sort of how it historically has happened. But that again is sort of just the way the process works right now here. But other states, Medicaid agencies and education agencies work together to collaborate on how this billing can work.
To that point about, so these decisions were made and how it currently was made before our time, right? Which I'm not saying it was wrong or anything like that, but that's where we're at now. We're at the decision point of where will this billing reside?
Right.
Regardless if we change the 180 or, you know, but the adoption of a cost-based reimbursement methodologies for LEAs, again, the Utah Department of Health is exploring the implementation of that. So ultimately, you know, we need to come together on that because Jordan has expressed concern that, you know, they really probably where the opportunity is here to expand this so much really shouldn't be the one to do this. So that's why we're having this discussion now, is to see where this resides. Because also too, can you allow, so the last time that we met, I'm not sure if anything's happened on the Hill, so to speak. Have you met with legislators or anything like that?
I have not. I have not met with anybody or have any updates there.
I mean, we met like right before the holiday break.
Okay, all right.
Leading into this, so.
Okay, I have one more question if my committee doesn't care. One of the comments is that this would increase the number of students, so that would increase the match that a district would have to put in. Are they matching now?
The services that they're providing,
It
yes.
would increase exponentially what that is. So have we talked to districts about their take on this or thoughts on this at all?
So I know many districts are really interested in this because, you know, the match is a 70-30 match. So you put in 30, you know, you can draw down 70. So it's to the districts, for those at districts that are interested, it's to their advantage. They're leaving money. I mean, I think just to clarify, I think what's positive about this is there's money on the table right now that could be drawn down for school-based services that we're not taking advantage of. And so I think schools recognize this, they see a need, and this is an opportunity to draw down that money. They're already putting in that match, but they can put in more match, but draw down more money.
To anticipate, going into the session, that we'll be asked, you know, the board and the staff will be asked to follow up with, I don't know if it'll be in public education approach or which committee it'll be in. We'll have to follow up because this is why I asked the question if there's been any legislators are aware that there's money out there. They're seeking input from the board, from the Department of Health on how best to take advantage or to use that opportunity and who should lead that process, if you will. But they understand too that there's some rules out there that exist. That again, my understanding is attributed to our board on the 180. I'd have to get more information on that from the.
So Scott, is this really ready for prime time yet, or I'm kind of feeling like that? I don't know.
Well, so what we're just seeking now is to ensure that you're informed of this, and we did put it as an action item. It doesn't mean you have to take any action today, other than, you know, it doesn't mean you have to make a motion to tell us to come back, but what we really need is some guidance on, do we continue to do this through Finance Committee, or is this something that, because of the magnitude and how much of our population could be or will be affected by this, do we just need to go to the whole board? Because, you know, we're right on the cusp of the start of the legislative session. So, you know, if we have additional Finance Committee meetings or, you know, further develop this by way of your legislative meetings on Thursdays, that's really what we're seeking here, because this was more, we went back and forth between an information item and an action item because of the timing of everything. So,
Well, I'm just wondering, Chair, I'm thinking that maybe this should come back to you and executive and to leadership to see if it's really ready to come back here and finish up, or if we need to have a discussion.
Well, you make
Anybody
the motion to
send it back to leadership?
send it to Leadership Executive Committee.
But I also don't want to pass it off if we need to keep
Whatever
moving.
if you do pass in here, sorry,
No, Chair.
okay, if you can move it out of here by motion, place it needs to land, you move it. Executive Committee, the agenda, depending on where it's ready. Finance Committee feels good about the recommendations to move this, have staff continue to move it forward. To have the board continue. No, you can get to the same place, the
Either
safest
way.
place is probably to report to the executive.
So I guess committee, I'm really interested, because I really think that we ought to withdraw the 180-day. Where.
180 minute.
180 minute, yeah. What?
Yeah, you have to figure out a mechanism for doing that.
Right, so,
In my mind, I was just thinking about that. What if there was a threshold? Something like that would kick in, that would allow for those hours prior to getting to an hour, say, okay.
or something, I think.
They won't leave. So I'm just thinking about that stuff in my head.
It's unfortunate somebody from Medicaid today, because I think they have recommendations on this as well.
It's to hear.
You know, they might be able to
Okay,
provide.
so, Deborah, what do you have?
That'll give us some sort of idea about the average of hours
Yeah.
for those that are under that threshold, so that we can determine some.
And maybe what do other states do? Have, maybe have the same type of children,
Okay, so I have
yes.
a developing story.
Okay,
CNN here. okay?
yeah, he was looking in the
I'm gonna
mirror.
talk about missile attacks.
Yeah.
and things like that. It's R 277750 where that rule, where it's in that rule, so it's section 10. So if you want, we can bring the rule back, you know, so, and thank you, Deborah, for.
So that would be the 180, and that could come back here,
Depends on timing.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
I would,
Because-
you can make a
Let's
motion
think
to have
about
it come back and then have the executive committee.
Come back under rule.
However, are we stepping on what we need to do in our legislative session if we move? I know we try and avoid that.
No, but it, between now, you have to do something with the rule. So you gotta have the rule come back. Rule back. By the time the rule comes back, you'll have a lot better information on how to move within the rule.
Do we have statute we need to work on those?
277750.
so I don't think. there's
Section
anything-
So it's just rule,
Between now and then,
this
if
was
there
our
is, then you
level.
can identify. So the
okay,
simplest thing is bring the
roll
rule.
back.
Make a motion to bring.
Okay,
And
subsection
in
10.
statute, the only thing was the recommendation to bring a report back to education interim during during interim, so.
And that's not till interim.
And I
So that's what we could, that's the report, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to do it again.
Does the rule come back to this committee?
See, it hasn't been scheduled yet, Chair, but I really anticipate that at some point, probably early on in the session, we're gonna get called up to say, well, what are you doing with the 180, if anything, right?
Okay, and where's it gonna go?
Where's the
Who's
Department
gonna-
of Health as far as, you know, creating a new intergovernmental transfer program, things like, or, you know, looking at, exploring implementation of a cost-based reimbursement methodology.
So
So
is
we're gonna
it
have to come together,
is
at
it
least
the
on our part, with the
recommendation?
180 minute.
work-based, office to do this?
So I think I agree, it would have been helpful if the Medicaid person was here, but that's okay. You know, because I think that they should continue to explore the implementation of the cost-based reimbursement methodology. And we should focus right now in the near term on that rule.
Let's just do that.
180 minute.
Bring the
Okay,
rule back.
Right,
And if there's a legislative ask with that rule coming back, by the 30th, you're gonna know
Then we
if there's a
can move it.
legislative act before you finish the rule.
yes.
And I think to the issue of whether or not students beyond an IEP can get Medicaid reimbursement and the value of that, I think the Department of Health is looking to the USP for guidance to move forward, because they can move forward through their rulemaking process to change that and start drawing down those funds for interested schools that would like to take advantage of that. But they're just looking to USBE to kind of give that green light to make those conversations continue on.
So do you wanna make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, we bring back R 277750, section 10 for further evaluation before the
Can we bring
finance
the whole
committee.
thing and not just section?
Okay, I make a motion,
Section 10 and R277750.
section 10. We can just do the entire thing, that's fine.
We have the rule, just 277750, right?
Right.
So just, let's bring our
Let's just do that, I make a
277.
motion, we bring back R 277750. R277-750 back before the finance committee.
Okay, do I have any discussion on that?
I stole it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Cammy, you all right? Okay.
Done.
All right, I appreciate you taking your time to come, and hopefully we can make a little
It's
progress
a little more
here.
complex
So,
than I anticipated, but,
Medicaid always is.
yeah.
thank you so much. All right. 6.4, Benjamin. It's an action item 277553, Charter School Oversight, Monitoring, and Appeals Amendment.
Benjamin.
Is your real name Benjamin?
Yes,
Oh, you know it.
named after Benjamin Franklin. I was a bicentennial baby.
Perfect.
Born in 76?
Yes.
Not 1776, right?
Not quite that long ago, no. All right,
Six.
so on this rule, it went, it had gone through this committee and was sent to the board, and we were asked to bring it back. The changes on this rule are, you need to look at lines 137 through 145. The question here is how broad we want the language to, do you want the language to be as far as when the superintendent can take specific corrective actions against charter schools that may have issues. The previous drafts had limited that to cases when these charter schools were on probation or had been notified of potential closure. And the feedback was the committee wanted to see some language where that was broader and could apply to any potential deficiencies. So that's what you've got before you today.
If
Perfect.
they've been identified as deficient.
What line is this on again, Ben?
So 137 through 145 of draft 3.
Roger, got it.
Do I have any discussion by the committee? Because really, the only change was on 138 from what it was before, right, Ben?
Changed it from
Probation
the
to
limitation of
identified.
probation and closure to identified, any
Deficiencies.
identified deficiency.
Helps mitigate some of the risk.
So would we still have a say in?
Oh, yes. Oh, no, yes.
The say.
Charter stuff
Oh, I am.
too, or-
I will ask. Okay, any other questions by committee? All right, anybody in the audience want to make a comment?
Our board hasn't seen it yet, so they don't have it.
All right, okay, thank you, Mike, for saying that, okay? They'll still have opportunity in board meeting, or before then. So, all right, then, because there really is only a minor change in here.
Yes.
All right, nobody else? All right, I'm seeking a
motion?
motion, yep.
I'll make-
I moved.
Rule R277-553 to the board for
Draft 3.
draft 3.
First reading,
On first reading.
or second and final. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Unanimous, I don't know
You're
which
such a
one.
good chair. I usually am like, boom, just make it happen.
Well, that's because you're efficient and
You
I'm
better
efficient.
speak up right now.
All right.
Otherwise, it's going before the full board.
Now, is Jennifer coming back for this one or nobody? Okay.
Also, Kevin, you cover this one?
This is charge
You
for
were
test.
okay? We have you. Okay, we're on 6.5. It's an action item, Charter School Task Force recommendation for transition from financial accounting standards-based FASB to Government Accounting Standards Board standards GASB.
So if you invite Kevin forward for this.
Kevin, you really are doing this, huh?
No,
Well, I am, but
I let Debbie know she's on her way.
Oh, she's on her way. Oh, so you were kidding when you,
She's coming.
okay.
oh, well then, can we skip this and go to the
We
next
could
one
go-
then?
Yeah, Ron's here for the transportation
Oh.
one if you want.
Wait, did I skip transportation?
No, it's on the agenda, but it's not on here.
Oh.
It's on, I think it's on here.
Yeah, it's not on our typed one.
It's not on our type.
So I did. Yes, okay, let's go to, oh, Debbie's here. maybe we better do Debbie because she's here and she's running back and forth, if that's okay. So we are gonna do, is it 6.5? Yes. We're gonna go ahead and do 6.5. And we've already introduced it, Debbie, so do you wanna come to the table?
Debbie's coming up, if I can, I did provide background obviously in there, but this is a result of a recommendation coming out of the Charter School Task Force. And then it being placed here in Finance Committee, it being the action to come up with a recommendation to the Finance Committee, which is why it's in draft form, on how to proceed with transition, recommendation, steps and timeline for procedural aspects of the conversion of charter schools from FASB to GASB. So that's why we're here, the purpose of the agenda item, with always beginning with the end in mind, that the Finance Committee will make a recommendation on how to proceed, what timeline, and whether incrementally or all in at once. That's what we're trying to foster, that discussion here today. So did I leave anything out?
Oh, I think it covers it.
Okay.
So with that, in the backups,
I was gonna say, maybe I didn't hear it, but that was a recommendation from the task force, is to go that route.
Yes.
And to support all that recommendation, there's work that we do on our end, and et cetera. Legislature on a bill file, et cetera. Round one of enacting on Charter School Task Force recommendation. I thought it also includes, where do we go from here and what?
So along that line, Chair, we provided quite a bit of backup. There's been a lot of questions of why, why this, why now? We hope to answer that question with the first item in the backup is, why government accounting and financial reporting should be different. Then we provide the Charter School Task Force report and recommendation itself. Then we provided the charter entity audit research, which was done, charter entity research that was all part of this, because obviously not all the Finance Committee members are part of the task force. We also provide, for the good of the group, a memo from then Attorney General Swallow that said, now it was in the scope or in light of a response to state finance regarding IRS considerations on Social Security, but clearly we extrapolate from his memo is that, he said that charter schools are government entities or, bodies. Next up was the original audit alert. Let's see, let me make sure. So there's two audit alerts that came out. One initially said that the Office of the State Auditor was moving towards GASB, but during the course of the task force, another one was issued that said, no, we can retain.
State auditor.
Say again?
My understanding from talking with John Dougal was that he is not for state charter.
Right.
That's the second audit.
That's the second alert.
That's
So
what
there
he
was
just
the
saying.
first one, right, and then there was the second alert that came out.
Can I clarify one thing with Chief Audit Executive Debbie Davis? With those auditor alerts, they're drafts. Nothing is final. Both of them are drafts. So just know that they were sent out to get comment. They have not been finalized at this point. So just so you're aware of that.
Then there's analysis of the GASB and FASB financial reporting differences. This was inclusive of, or was a response to Debbie's point of those alerts being draft audit alerts. One of the external auditors, Squire, had responded to that first audit alert. That's why I was saying that there was two. To the first draft audit alert, saying that they supported transition to GASB as well. Then, for the purposes of this meeting, with all that background and information, if there's more questions or concerns, both either Debbie or I can answer those. We created a draft PowerPoint for your consideration with, right now, that amounts to one of two courses of action. Course of action one is titled study, timeline and tasks, meaning that it's more of a gradual progression of charter schools, like up to 25 charter schools, just as an example, or a piece of this, starting with them, transitioning them, allowing enough time to gather cost information and impact information on the transition of those 25 charter schools, with the intent of that group of charter schools transitioning incrementally, being, large in student count, medium and small, try to get a diverse population of charter schools. The second one, course of action, is what we titled fully implement, meaning that we move along the timeline of all charter schools converting by a particular date. And this is all subject to your review and input and considerations and updates or changes at your will. So that's, to the chair's point, we're just at that starting point. This is the first iteration. Provided these just to get this discussion and this process going.
I'm so sick of these 2 4-letter words.
What did you say?
Acronyms,
FASB
acronyms,
and
Laura,
GASB.
there's a big difference.
Okay, Government Accounting Standards Board.
Okay,
and-
so I have a question. I actually, yesterday, for the first time, kind of understood some of the real differences between FASB and GASB. And as you kind of get this, Debbie, so tell me if I'm wrong on this. No, it was actually yesterday. Yesterday morning, I was enlightened. Shocking. FASB doesn't require, they take, and this may be simplistic, but it works for me. They take all the funds and they put them in a pot and work out of there. GASB, you have to make a pot for each color of money, I guess is the way to say it. And in FASB, it's all becomes green. Not correct.
Pretty close. Mm-hmm. Called fund accounting in GASB is what they do, and so there are different funds that are required. If you want me to maybe just talk for a second about accounting standards, because there has been a lot of talk about what's GASB, what's FASB, what are the differences, and let's be very clear about what, I think you'll want to be very clear about what they are moving forward as you make this choice. So an accounting standard is just how you keep financial information, right? So it's debits and credits. And FASB tells you this is how you do debits and credits if you're, if you're a nonprofit or if you're a private for-profit entity. That's what FASB is telling you. And GASB tells you from a government perspective, this is how you do your debits and credits. And so you put that into an accounting software system, right? And it could be QuickBooks, it could be Finet. Some people don't like QuickBooks, but that no value judgment. Whatever accounting software you use, right? You're going to input those debits and credits, and then at the end of the day, annually, you're going to pull out that information and put it into a report, your financial statement, and that gets audited. These are not auditing standards at all, right? So it's just accounting. It's how do we do those debits and credits, and then what does it look like in a financial report? GASB statements have management's discussion analysis. They have basic financial statements. They have footnote disclosures, and there's a lot more footnote disclosures for GASB than there are for FASB. The reason for that and the management discussion and analysis and required supplementary information and a statistical section in your financial report is because GASB felt accountability is the foundation for accounting, because you're reporting back to taxpayers. They have the right to know how you're using their money. And so that's why there's a lot of the differences between GASB and FASB are because of that foundation. So you'll hear there's a lot said about, well, but there's problems, and there's problems with people that use GASB, and there's problems with people that use FASB. That's not a standard problem. That's an implementation problem. That's an internal control system problem. That does not mean there's a difference with the standard. The standard, what you're going to decide there is for, comparability and consistency and transparency. Those are the things you're looking at when you decide what standard to use. And then how that's implemented is going to impact the product and the outcome that you get. So I don't know, was that helpful?
One of the debates that rolls on, are charter schools government entities?
According to what I've read, yes.
Well, according to some, they are not, and some
Nonprofit, aren't they? Like, don't they fall under a nonprofit, but yet they are? It's kind of like a gray area.
Well, it's, yes.
Before you get into that discussion,
Okay,
can
sorry.
I can I go one more level of?
Yes, I,
GASB and FASB both have, that wasn't shared here, they're set up for an end game. FASB end game is to pacify, satisfy, protect a different entity than GASB. Those are the differences. Tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I just want to know where I might be right. The reason that we are having a lot of this discussion is because we want this end game to look a certain way. Efficiencies that we have had that sparked the whole conversation in our task force isn't so much the end game, but it's what's outside of that. When I'll say, I use it above, somebody else might say below, is the program accounting. There's another term, what is it? They're all the, what is it? Fund accounting. And that system, if you have the right fund accounting system, there is no question in my mind within that layer that you can take all of that and go to GASB and or go to FASB. So what's enlightened me through the task force and then even more recently things after that is the most critical piece of all of this is if we were to dictate or try to move on something would be the fund accounting system. To me is more relevant than the fight, whether it's GASB or FASB, because I put myself in Scott's shoes and the staff's shoes. If I have access to that fund accounting and I can get in and do that at that standard, I can get what I need. They, as this fight and this battle over government entity, non-government entity, if we want to get to where right looks like, maybe we should start up on this line, on the program, or not program, the fund accounting side of it, and push that through, because this other fight, there are stakeholders out there that are going to put up you've got to pick your battles. And a battle I think that we can win quickly moving forward is on the fund accounting side. And then this other thing's going to happen over time and that. If we want to get everyone to where they need to be quickly, without a big push, without implementation plans and pilots and everything else, let's dictate that one standard. But it's not really a standard. It's to me it is. I'm using the wrong.
It's in board rule. It's required.
And we have it in. So how do we reinforce? How do we make sure we get there first with consequences and monitoring and whatever it is? Because we've had it in board rule. How many years has it been?
I think specifically since 2018, but indirectly before that it was there also.
Yeah, but it went into effect in 2018.
October of 2018.
And so we haven't been really, I mean, we say it in rule and that, but we haven't pushed the water to the end of the roll with all of the LEAs on that. And that's part of our problem today. So I just want to make sure this finance committee knows the little bit that I know, and then if my intelligence is wrong, I'd like staff to tell me otherwise, because as we're moving forward on this, then we need to have that end game in mind, and that will be talked about a lot, is what are we really, really wanting at the end? Because if we say GASB, that doesn't guarantee we're going to get exactly what we want. And and I'll go back to my preference, and I've said this, is if I was in any LEA at all, that's a safer place for me because I'm about all of the transparency and everything that's part of it. But to force function it, we're gonna have this we're gonna go clear back to the 501c3s and everything else. So there's some background.
Sorry, Chair, I so appreciate the fact that I think everybody in the community, and I could be just speaking from my own, can get on board with program or fund accounting. Do I have any nods? No. I'll get on board with that. How we get that fund accounting might not be perfect, but as long as it's auditable, and is there such a word as that?
No.
Well, through monitoring and other things, it gets in there. But here's the problem. We already have it in board rule.
So how do we strengthen it?
Why was it? These are the questions that I have and I'm not, I don't know if anyone in here can answer the question. Why did people not go there when it's in rule?
Well, maybe I can't answer that specific question, but based on my experience of doing audits and things, it's the accountability framework, right? You start with the design. You've designed a policy or procedure. We have that in-board rule. What's the next step? It has to be implemented correctly. And so you have to how is it implemented? What did you put in place to ensure that you were going to comply with that law? What did you do? And I think that's where we fall down. And then the third step is who's out there monitoring to make sure that at first it was designed appropriately and then implemented appropriately. And all of that needs to happen so that the board can reach their objectives and the LEA can reach their objectives, right? That's why you do those three things. But I'd say we're missing the implementation and we're missing the monitoring because we have a rule. And I guess we could go back and say, is the rule doing enough? Is it comprehensive? And does everybody know about it? And then how do we implement it? Is it more training? Is it more tools? What is it to help us do that?
Does anybody know the background or the history as to why there's that provision in code saying that charter schools are essentially can use FASB? Like, what was the thinking behind it? Or
so what it says in code is that
FASB, right?
charter schools are supposed to be set up as a nonprofit corporation, with a couple of exceptions. You're set up as a nonprofit, and generally nonprofits follow FASB. But there are some circumstances, and the definition of GASB, which is what you'll find in the auditor alert, or a piece of it doesn't have the full definition, but a piece of it is included in the auditor alert. And it says if you're a governmental entity, even if you're a nonprofit, if you're a governmental entity, that is when you'll follow GASB and not FASB. And so that's where the question has come up. Right. Well, then are charter schools governmental? And in some situations it seems like they are, and in some situations it seems like they may not be. And I know Auditor Dougal does have concerns. Well, if they are a governmental entity, there are other things that could come into play, risk management, those kinds of things. That would be a concern that we should consider everything, where we're going. But I don't know if FASB versus GASB was really even considered 25 years ago when we were first looking at charter schools and what do they look like and how are they set up.
Well, I guess my question comes down to, here we have an actionable item, but the actionable item is the recommendation from the task force. So I'm not sure where to go. Make a different recommendation, or do we need to bring it up? I think guidance. Thank you.
Amend.
The motion that the board took is they had these recommendations. Yep. That we would take those, and we took those and we're putting them out in committee for further discussion, whatever proposed betterments or what changes or whatever, and then committees will take something to the board to act on. So it's not that the work wasn't done very well, or you just got to push everything to committee. I'll go back. The committee made recommendations to the board, and it's up to us to act on those in whatever way.
flesh those
that
out a little bit.
is flush
Okay.
it, take it to the next step that you have somebody.
Oh, Royce, come on up.
You didn't recognize him without that bow tie.
Does anyone else have any comments they want to make?
Royce Van Tassel, Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. I guess my comments are not directed to everyone here because some of you I think are aware of them, some of you are not. But following the completion of the task force and the adoption of the task force's recommendations, a smaller group got together with Representative Moss to say, okay, how do we put those recommendations into a bill, and how do we make sure that everybody's on the same page? And we had a couple of very productive meetings. Chair Huntsman had one of those over at his office. We had another one, I think it was earlier. Was it earlier this week? Time sort of blends together quickly. And on this point about FASB and GASB, and really to your point a moment ago about what were the reasons why we didn't, and what are the repercussions if we didn't, or if we do, I think that there was general consensus among that group that said, for purposes of financial reporting, it probably does make sense to designate charter schools as governmental entities. And in doing that, you trigger the requirement to implement GASB. As the task force noted, there's probably some transition that we have to work out about how do we do this without imposing undue burdens in, just going from 0 to 50 instantaneously. Teslas can do that. Charter schools try. We don't always succeed. Everybody tries, but we rarely succeed. So I think that, we're going to have to figure out what that specific transition will look like. But I think that there was general agreement that, yeah, we can work that out. And I'm frankly hopeful, based on what I've seen so far, that that agreement and the others that are in that, if we can go over that, I don't think they're necessarily germane to this specific item, but
Program or fund accounting
Yes.
was an agreement as well.
yes, we were going to put that explicitly into statute because, to Chair Huntsman's point, the requirement already exists. And why do people not do it? I don't know the answer to that either. But part of the hope was putting it in statute elevates its importance, if you will, its profile, and says, if you didn't think we were serious before, we're really serious. It's in statute, not just quote unquote in board rule. I mean, both of them have the force of law, but that's sort of the hope. And so fund accounting is and should be the standard. And the move to GASB, I think, will happen if we, for financial reporting purposes, say charter schools are a governmental entity. And so that's most of what's going to be in Representative Moss's bill, which is really the product of all of that hard work for the task force.
To that. And Jefferson Moss wanted to get started early and get in, so get all of his stuff in the queue. And he knows this one group was meeting. I don't know how many meetings they've had, but I've sat in on because they asked for my.
The only meetings.
To kind of get input, but they also in those meetings are aware that the State Board of Education and their committees is all moving in more dialogue and more things, and so some recommendations can still come. And so it's not like something's happening behind the table or behind the wall, I should say, or under the table. Right? However we say that.
No. It's not even Friday yet.
Friday. So, all of those players, including Jefferson Moss and whatever legislators he's talking to, knows that this board, and not only in finance, but other committees, is still moving the dialogue forward, and there's legislators out there saying, what can we do? How can we support? But as we're moving this forward, we need to bring our A game. And be very, how would you say it? Cautious that if we get too big, too robust, too fast, nothing's gonna happen in the session, because they're gonna say, oh, it's going too quick. So it's not that we're moving slow, but we're trying to be practical. I hope we're gonna be practical and moving forward on this, but, so that's just the background behind that one, but those Jefferson Moss kind of taking a point, and he is looked at amongst the legislators because he came from this board right into the legislature, and kind of slipped up to the kind of a front person of, okay, we're really what's happening. So he's a strong advocate of public education and that. So we'll see where that goes, but that's the background behind what he's doing.
Okay.
I haven't seen a draft that's being worked on.
I haven't seen it either.
So, but Moss is going to be doing some kind of a bill basically that has to do with what we're discussing right now. So.
Is wanting to support the task force recommendations.
Okay.
So we could do this though, Shell, with the caveat that they have.
Right.
It's for,
I mean, I'd hate to move forward with a bill, with a rule, and then here comes the legislative session and new legislation, and we're like, uh-oh, let's change the rule because it doesn't align. So it's almost like slow down a bit to wait to see what happens with the bill. We move forward. I just don't know why we're trying to just rush and say we're gonna switch to Gatsby without a
answer
bill.
that question. It was really important because we didn't have a sponsor of any kind of bill. We didn't ask for a sponsor of a bill yet. That we act in a timely manner, and which was this. Recommendations came out of the task force. Those recommendations instantly got divided up and put into.
I know the whole process.
Okay.
I
Yeah, but, so it's not a rush, it's so that there is open discussion, and there's an opportunity for open discussion, in an open meeting, I should say, discussion, as this is playing out. Now, as this bill, as it gets crafted in that, through our discussion or any of our inputs that come up from any of our committees, if we need to make an amendment or something like that, it's got clout.
well, it opens the door for that. Otherwise, you have to wait.
Exactly. And so
I see
we're
what you're
still in a position of.
But we could
taking
do,
action.
thinking about this, because Royce, give me the terminology again. GASB for
funding or fund.
For financial reporting
for
purposes.
financial reporting, we could at least move that, because that is complementary to what's happening.
Thing is that last time during board meeting, and I brought up the state auditor's thing, and that if we recommend this, then we're going to be essentially moving forward with switching to GASB. And there was like a lecture of some kind given to me about, no, that's not what we're doing. Yet here we are, that's what we're doing. So, I'm trying to understand like what the best thing is for charter schools. I don't wanna hurt you guys reporting, but I want the correct, proper reporting to come.
Is that you raising your hand, Royce?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, to your point, Member Bolter, the recommendation and what we really agreed to was to say, for financial reporting purposes, charter schools are governmental entities. And under the standards that the auditor relies on, that are propagated by GASB, that says you would use GASB. We were very careful. I mean, the auditor has participated in these meetings, and he's been very firm, shall we say, in saying it would be poor form, at least, for the legislature to just simply say, adopt GASB. But if instead we rely on the standards that GASB says and say, are you a governmental entity or are you not a governmental entity for those purposes, he's comfortable with that. He's not certain that it will solve all of the problems, but that's frankly neither here nor there. The point is that his frustration, and you know, maybe, I think I speak for him accurately here. His point is we should rely on this sort of standards-based analysis rather than just sort of saying, we're gonna wrench it over.
Okay.
And the standards-based analysis goes to this question of, are charter schools, for financial reporting purposes, governmental entities? If we say yes, then that triggers GASB using the standards-based analysis. And that's why I think, to Chair Belknap's suggestion about what that motion might look like, that seems like a pretty reasonable direction to go.
So of course, an action.
Yeah, go.
The course of action for us is, I'm anxious to see what that bill looks like, and then we act accordingly. And yet, two individuals, they're not one, but two that's together.
What was your,
Oh, so,
Laura, what was your?
Well, I'm just, I don't know yet. I'm thinking too, because we could, as a committee, we can discuss this, but move forward with the idea that for financial reporting, that we look at all our LEAs as governmental entities. And you say it that way, which is not separation of any, for reporting.
It's important, you have to identify.
And then it still has to go before the board. By then, we will have
Something maybe from,
language, and then we can rework it, and the leadership could toss it back, or.
this is a very significant change.
And I really
You're done with
want
Royce.
somewhere that, I don't know, Royce is leaving already. And I really think it's important that we, as a finance committee, include, I always call it programmatic funding, but it's fund,
You can call it either. They're,
that we include that as, that's absolute, you know? Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Could I just, it's related, but it's kind of the bigger thing. One of the things that crossed my mind is recently, just because I'm a BYU fan, I'll say that, and I came out of their accounting school, right? I know, right in your face, sorry, Laura. But they have the #1 accounting school in the nation, and the U of U has a great program, and Weber does, and Utah State does. We have brilliant accounting minds in this state. Why not tap that as a resource if we're going to do a transition? We don't have to do it all ourselves. I think they would jump on it. What a great opportunity for them to participate, right? I think it would be beneficial for them. And if we could get some accounting students to see how awesome education is, right? Pipeline for education.
She's always thinking. Isn't she?
Anyway, just throw out that as a suggestion.
Yes, Darren.
So, and I don't have not even close to the training and the expertise we have in the finance world here. But is there something we could be doing to help this along when we say in our board rule, does it say fund accounting? I'm trying to remember. Is there something more that we can do to help protect us and add clarity of what our minimum expectation is in that fund accounting practice? Or just because we say it doesn't mean everyone will comprehend it as meeting a certain expectation. So is there something that we can do as a finance committee to help better define a minimum expectation of what that is?
Do you have?
That should be our course of action, is this thing is moving forward.
So essentially, we found ourselves here 5 years ago. We were kind of in the same spot where we were supposed to be doing more of this fund accounting, and we weren't doing it right. And maybe Deborah comes up here and says, what was that process like to get our house in order so that we were doing it correctly, and we could see when money comes in, it goes out here. It's not just going into one pot. And so I think as we're looking for how do you implement that or how do you fix that, we just went through it. So what were the things that we learned through that process that we could then say, hey, Elliot, here's some, just check these things to make sure you're doing this because this is required. And I think the rule is actually pretty specific now about what has to happen and when it has to happen. But Deborah can attest, everybody in financial operations here could attest that it took a lot of work. It took a lot of priority, and that's difficult because we're busy.
Right. Through the processes, we're getting closer, we're getting closer, we're getting better. Yep. Remember those? Yep, we checked off this one, we got this victory. So there are some things that we could be doing to help with the expectation of the conversion, to make sure everybody's on board on that expectation, but I don't have the expertise or those experiences, and maybe we go to staff and say, okay, put yourself in the shoes of a small, medium, large LEA, and help us manage an expectation of how to get there, as we're talking about timelines and other things to come into compliance, so that we're fair and reasonable, and we're realists in those expectations of.
Okay, I think I have it. I might need a little help, so don't throw anything at me.
Out there.
Okay. I know, but somebody might need to correct me, and which I'm fine with. Okay,
That doesn't happen very
I'd
often,
like to make a motion that we request staff to bring us back the rule that contains the fund accounting about fund
For 277-113-6.
113.
Dang.
And give us some recommendations for more clarity inside that rule, what that might need to look like or not, okay? And how to incorporate that LEAs are, for financial accounting, are governmental entities.
Second that.
Second here.
Oh, never mind.
But does that,
But
That
that
actually sounded good.
crystal clear, Laura.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Stupendous.
Nobody's
you-
ever doing any better. Call in votes.
wait, does anybody on the committee have any questions or comments to that? And then-
Yes, God, if he come.
Get it
This
too?
guy.
Oh, this guy.
I have a clarifying question.
Okay, that's why we haven't voted yet.
So, okay, the last part about specifying the rule that our government,
That for financial reporting, all LEAs are governmental entities. Okay, but that'll come back in a rule, which I think will complement the bill about the same time coming around the plate.
Managing expectations, we might only get the first part of it, and we're still working on the second.
Yeah.
It's, there's some timing issues.
Well, we're hoping the statute goes at the same time,
That's what we're hoping.
Shot in the dark, but we're.
because the rule's coming back. It's not, yeah, Jen, do come up. We have a motion on the table, so I'm not supposed to do that. Correct. No, come, anyway, because this is kind of big.
Just a thought that what you're doing is you're trying to define what LEAs are in rule. When LEAs are defined in statute, and so that may be a better thing to define in statute rather than trying to define it. And that once you get the definition in statute, then you look at, well, what does that mean? And you put that meaning into board rule. Just a thought.
It's not a thought. Great thought, though.
Sorry.
That's something to really think about.
But you know what, I'm gonna stay with my motion, because I still I think Jennifer's
That'll still be
correct, but our staff may come back and say, this will be better done here. So, I appreciate that that's gonna be a discussion, so thank you, Jennifer.
Good.
Okay, any more discussion at the table? Since I don't wanna go out of order again.
More heavily, what she just said.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Magnanimous. Okay, we are on to 6.6, but our sheet is incorrect. And the sheet in front of you is incorrect.
Oh, okay, well.
We are on 6.6, it's student,
Recognition in progress.
no, we're on student, update on student transportation, and it's an action item.
Sorry, by Ron.
Yeah,
Ron, come on.
Student.
That's right.
somehow we missed one. So Ron, introduce yourself again too. If you want to sit in the middle, you won't hit your knees on that. It's really bad.
Okay, I'm Ron Litchfield. I'm the State Transportation Specialist for the Utah State Board of Education.
Okay, you
Go
want
ahead,
to
Ron,
go over
just tee
this?
it up, tell them what we're
Yeah.
doing.
So we've had a review of our state standards, which was approved last year. And we had just a few items that we needed to update. We had some unintended consequences that we're trying to clarify, and some things that we've always been doing that were against what was in the rule for many years. And so we're just trying to, again, make it so that we're following the rules. So.
Okay, we'll stay here. Do you want to go over them?
Yeah, so the first one was, we adopted the 2015 national standards for the tires and rims. And what that, our unintended consequence with that adoption is that it opened up the availability for LEAs to purchase a type A1 school bus, which would be a van chassis school bus with single rear tires, which could essentially hold, up to 30 students. We do have a Utah law that prevents us from using any vehicle greater than 11 passengers with the driver, unless it's designed as a school bus. And so those two rules have been kind of conflicting. And so by us bringing back the revision which we took out, which school buses had to have dual rear wheels, it prevents us from using the van chassis school bus and with our standards, so that we have consistency between our laws and our standards.
So what is that going to do to our districts who own these vans now?
I don't think, I'm not aware of anyone who owns those.
Okay.
Because
Okay,
That's big.
breath of fresh air.
because we did get some information from our vendors who would supply some of those vehicles. For clarification, we've addressed them that it is against our Utah law. And so we've been proactive to, try to make sure that hasn't happened.
So we're 99% sure that we don't own any, you're 100% sure.
So I can verify for school districts that they don't.
Some of our charters may.
Our charters that insure through someone different than risk management, I don't have an idea of what has been purchased in the last 3 months.
Okay, so I think it's important that we get this clarity out, and I'm not sure how you do that, but I think it's important. Back to our discussion earlier, you have this rule, but now you better make sure everyone knows. Yes,
So my understanding is that we have a rule.
Law.
We have a law that
yeah, so now.
says, so,
The rule's not gonna change. We're just saying our school bus standards allowed a vehicle, but we would also supersede and say that the law prevents us from having that vehicle.
why don't we bring the rule back? Is there back and
Is it incorrect in rule, or is it incorrect in a document?
So I think what Ron's saying is the rule is correct. Standards that need to be updated to support the rule.
Yeah,
So
so,
we're updating standards.
So if you
it's
go,
standard.
okay,
I was
so if you go into your backups, if you go into your
Thank you.
backups, and open this
Yeah,
up,
I know it says
it
standards,
shows
but
the
I wasn't,
change.
yeah, I
Okay,
got
so
it.
it changes, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure,
Okay.
so what we're doing is the standards support the rule, right? So we need to update the standards so that we're training so to speak, the liaison. That makes sense? Or the standards are to expand or add additional clarity to, not solely, but they help.
And we set the standards.
Correct. By law, you set the
Yeah,
standards.
so we're approving these
Right.
standards.
So by law, you set the standards, which I put the law in there, I put the code in there.
I see it.
By rule, you do it, but, you know, obviously the rule would be just, you know, blow up if we put all the standards in the rule, right? So the law says you as the board will set standards for public, or people traffic. That's what you're doing.
All right, and then it looks like there's two
Right,
more.
Ron? They're amending the standards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going point by point on what all needs to be amended to standards. People transport.
Okay, then the next three items are actually under our driver requirements. And I believe the first one was, we had in our standards that you, to be a bus driver in Utah, you had to have a Utah driver's license. And that's not the case. And it's, we have several districts that are near our borders and utilize drivers with out-of-state licenses. And so we wanted to clarify that and remove that as a requirement. The second piece,
No more than two
This is
moving
accidents.
violations. to move
yes. So we also had some confusion. I believe it was last year we had a requirement for us to do background checks on our employment background checks of our drivers. And so as we found out, some of our districts would call and find out that they were in some type of accident at a previous employer. And by putting in where we look for those accidents, based on that MVR report, which is their motor vehicle report, it helps us identify the accidents they've been cited for. And so we wanted to clarify what type of accident, and that's really the MVR is the only way we can accurately view that.
And that's the one that's free.
And that is free. Yeah.
No more than two moving violations or two accidents, combination of moving violations. Adding as shown on the driver's motor vehicle.
Because so if they could be in an accident, but they aren't cited, then it's not on there, correct?
Right.
Yeah, because it wasn't their fault. Okay, all right, okay.
And the next one is with specific to bus drivers' current and prospective.
Yeah, so the physical assessments is something that we've traditionally done on a biennial basis, so every other year. And we've had a couple recommendations. Most recently this year last year, we had a recommendation from NTSB to have annual physical assessments on our drivers. And I brought that to some of our director meetings and discussed what benefit and find out what concerns directors had. And for the most part, everybody, there were really no objections, and we talked a lot about some different scenarios where having annual safety inspection, annual physical assessments would benefit the drivers and make the bus drivers safer in those districts.
And can they do this assessment like they're on a route, someone could get on with them and observe them? Or is it a whole separate?
The assessment takes about probably 5 to 10 minutes.
But it's literally behind the wheel?
No.
Oh, this is a paper and pencil?
No. This is a physical assessment. So step one would be picking up.
Oh, it's a literal,
Is it 50 pounds? I can't
physical,
remember what
not
it is.
in
You
person.
physically have to.
They should do both.
Oh, geez, I'd
Carry.
fail.
So carrying 50 pounds, just about the length of the school bus, dragging a.
Okay, I got it now. I was slow on the uptake, but.
The physical assessment demonstrates the physical capability of being able to evacuate a student in an emergency.
Okay.
And you're able to get in and out of that
You better get in and out of that seat.
without help.
Yeah, got it. So I do have a question then. So do we not have any bus drivers who have physical disabilities?
And I would say not that haven't passed the physical assessment.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Some of them can have this disability like I do at the hearing.
Right, they could, yeah, I didn't know, that's kind of a. Okay, so I'm looking, oh, does anyone have any comments?
So
Chair has a question.
On your notes on the physical assessment, is there a change?
Yeah, annually.
Just changing from,
It's just not over on the right-hand side.
See it?
I was just looking for a
It's
change.
just not highlighted.
yes, it's still in brackets, and
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I have my mouse here. Let me get back to it.
Move that we adopt the summary of changes to the standards for Utah school buses and operations 2019. Is that right?
Can I clarify that? So is it 2019 or 2020?
2020.
2020. It says 2019 on the document.
yeah, we can update it to 2020.
Yeah, so will you please do that?
2020.
Hey, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you for answering all our questions.
It's on there, it's on there.
Okay, we have one, I think we just have one more thing, right? Because we don't have any data, do we?
No.
Okay, but we do have, this is kind of exciting, you guys, honestly. Yes, it is.
So this goes to Chair Huntsman's earlier remark about we're almost there, we're getting closer. There, meaning that we finally have come out of the 20 percentile on the ICP. But this is big, because what it means is when we make requests for additional FTEs, request for additional FTEs, cost isn't as much. So the legislature will finally say, okay, you come down, because for those of you that were here 5 years ago under the USOR situation, we had a lot of problems, and we were very good about making sure the federal government knew about it, and they were very good to us because we were so transparent that we were basically charging a government agency for money of over $2 million for services we weren't providing. So fast forward to today, so when they left, when USOR left, even if they wouldn't have left, this wasn't why, but left, we had this $2 million deficit to make up, and we did our level best. We reduced positions, we cut back, but we had to increase the percentages of what we charge to unrestricted or restricted grants. And I think the first year wasn't like 24. So now we're down on the unrestricted rate to about 17%. And that's because of the due diligence that we've taken on not filling positions with the ICP and being very cost conscious about the indirect cost pool. It's really a reflection on the superintendent's fiscal responsibility, but more so the staff and Deborah's, as our controller.
Yeah.
We've really done a job of getting. Now, we need to come down a little further, of course, but big decline, I think, last year. Well, I did, last year was 22%, or this year it's 22%. Yeah, so now we're down to 17%. So big decline, big
That's
jump
awesome.
down. And so, for the record, I kept saying that year after year. I said, it'll get better, it'll get better. I didn't think it'd go quite down to 17. I thought more like 19, but so it's good.
That's awesome, thank you. Did you want to talk about?
Well, guys, you guys that know all of it, indirect cost pool is like the overhead operations of this, and appearance to be, when it seems to be too high, then it's like too rich, too fat, too whatever, people's mind go all about administrative. So my concern is, and I'm a little bit with you, our goal back then was, okay, we need to constantly, we'll probably say no to more things than we say yeah, but to bring that down and get down into the teens and then look at sharpen our pencil more. But that swing is pretty significant. I wonder if it's worth, I mean, it's great news and all that other stuff, but kind of like some of my guys in financials, when they slay it one month, they don't want to look. They're surprised. You know, hey, man, look at me, you know. But it's like, okay, let's get real. So I, have we gone there and said, okay, can I help me understand? Is it, or are we gonna have some correction?
Your question about maybe because of the sharp decline, we maybe lost some efficiencies? Or is it-
I'm just trying to, and you're,
Yeah.
I'm not living in the world of how all that got calculated. But it's almost like too good to be true to have it jump that much, and it's like, hey, let's all
so-
high five and dance, and then
Okay.
the next round we catch something.
Yeah, so that, okay, good question. So there's it's an iterative process, so now we're subject to the federal government auditing our calculations. So we've submitted, what this is it's good news that we've submitted our calculations of where we're at, but it is still subject to the federal government saying, oh, no, you know, you can't use these
So we're
cost
not gonna see
factors.
Scott's happy dance right now.
Not quite yet, I
Okay.
mean, it's good news.
But
that
the
we're there.
fact that it went
So
down
it could
fast.
adjust, it could adjust a little bit, it could come up to,
Yeah.
but then too, it could even go down further if
Never know.
the federal government says you do it, because there has been some changes to the cost elements, and that, they use as far as the factors go, so we'll keep you updated on
Okay.
that. There is we just can't set that rate, it has to be reviewed and accepted.
So how
by
long
the
till that comes back?
It's varied, but we're on a good timeline. I'd say we should get it by around March or April.
Okay.
So if
And
it
then we
goes
start
down lower,
lower.
and Deborah does a happy dance.
We
if it
both do
stays
a
up
happy
there, then you do the
dance,
happy
so yeah, that would be pretty good. So-
Jared, you're gonna do a happy dance too?
Well,
What?
I just want you to know that I'm trying to increase it, but Scott and Deborah won't let me.
That's all we know.
Of course you are.
It's true.
That's your department's
Yeah,
job.
it is.
The no can do stamp.
All right, was there any,
Yeah.
does anybody on the committee have requests for data, any recognitions you want to do? Or-
That's great.
For being a great chair.
Oh,
Good job.
Awesome.
we did so, no, you did so good because it was so big today and I thought we're gonna get out.
Yeah, you had me intimidated. You're like, oh man, where'd all this heavy lifting?
We had heavy lifts.
So I was like,
Okay,
"No, we can get through this in a heartbeat."
then we are adjourned.
Do you want either of those rules to